30 or 40 years. And we're doing a bit of a flip of the model of our church. And so we're saying, instead of this kind of attractional, hoping people come to us, we're trying to figure out how do we go to them and make disciples that are ready to go out to where people are. And so we're really trying to think about, not just what's going on inside the walls of the church, but what's going on outside the walls of the church, recognizing that, really our greatest contribution to the community is in our people. Mm-hmm. And how do we help to equip people? We're talking about these areas where they live, work, learn, and play. How do we equip people where they live, work, learn, and play to be a great influence, to be a great, citizen, to be a great model of the kingdom of God, and really trying to say, we're not just expecting people to come to us, but how do we go to them? How do we get outside the walls and equip people where they're at?
It sounds very first century to me.
Yeah, imagine that.
Yeah, they didn't have big attractional buildings.
They had not much.
They didn't have much at all. They shared what they had. Acts 2:42.
Yes. Yeah.
That is really interesting. And what occurs to me, a couple things. Number one, some of us that hung on to that seeker model, like you said, it was developed in the 70s.
Right.
People around here in the Erie area might remember the street church, where it literally met on the streets, right? And some my family members and myself were involved with that.
Yep.
But that was 50 years ago.
Exactly. Yeah.
45 years ago. And so it would be like back then doing something from the 30s.
Yeah. Yeah, I like to say, like when I came to Grace in 1995.
Yes.
So when I started at Grace. So I just celebrated 30 years, by the way, at Grace.
Congratulations.
Isn't that crazy?
That is amazing.
So 1995, but it would be like me coming to Grace and them hiring me and saying, and hey, listen, we want you to run a 1945 model of church, 50-year-old model.
Right.
And, so yeah, it's time for a remodel. And so we're really trying to, and the thing, it's tough. I mean, we're not, we're not totally set up to do what we're talking about doing. Mm-hmm. We're staffed to run the kind of church that we are, not to run half of what we do be outside the walls. And how do we, almost kind of consult people where they're at about what does it look like to kind of live out your faith, live out character in your leadership, and wherever you find yourself, to be a great influence for the kingdom of God. So we're trying to rethink everything. So
what is again, we can totally go into a rabbit trail here, but in your opinion, what's the purpose of that Sunday gathering then?
Well, I do think that, so a lot of people think, we've started calling it, a lot of people think that Sunday is kind of the finish line. We think of Sunday as the starting line. So this is where you kind of come in, you get refreshed. We have community together. We really believe that community is really important, and that the worship of God is very important as a communal exercise. And so we come together, we worship God, we have community with one another, but then we say, hey, this is just the beginning. Like, now go out, now the real work begins.
Yes.
The work of your faith is not to come to church every Sunday. The work of your faith is to live the other 6 days as if God is your God.
Kind of like when you were playing for McDowell in football.
Yeah.
You had the pep rally in the middle of the day.
Right.
And not to say that church is a pep rally, but you got all excited, you got plugged in, you got focused, and then you had to go hit the field.
That's
that
right.
night, right?
That's right. And the analogy that I often use is the huddle. If you think about the huddle in the football field, there's a lot of NFL teams right now that are running a no huddle offense, which means they just come up to the line and they just run offense.
Right.
I'm afraid there's a lot of churches running a no offense huddle. And so we just stay in the huddle.
Yeah.
And it's like, can you imagine watching an NFL game and watching these big, huge, mammoth players get in the huddle and they just go, hey, why don't we just stay in this huddle? Like,
it's really safe here.
There's big people out there trying to hurt us. This is a lot better. And it's like, I don't know. We've talked at our church, like the people in the community don't care about how good our huddle is. They really don't. They have no interest, but they do care if the person in the cubicle next to them is a good person. Mm-hmm. And is living out their kingdom values where they work, or the person that they're bench pressing next to at the gym is a good person, and so I think it's really that shift to go, hey, what does it look like to be on offense and not just in our little holy huddle on Sunday? That has a huge purpose. but it's not the end all. And I think a lot of people check the box and go, man, if I can just get to the huddle on Sunday, I've done my Christian duty. And it's like, man, I think Jesus' vision was a little bit more encompassing than that.
Make the connection to the Global Leadership Summit, or a lot of, you said here that it's a Christian-based leadership event, but it's applicable for everyone. So talk about that a bit.
Yeah, no, I just think that, so we're hosting the Global Leadership Summit. We've been hosting it since 2008.
Okay,
and so
it has been over 15 years. Yeah, wow.
And this is, I believe it is one of the best leadership, just solid leadership events in the world. I think that the quality of the presenters and the speakers is just incredible. And, as I think about it, it is not just a Christian thing. We've had lots of business leaders, lots of actually businesses that are sponsoring their people to come to the summit because it's been so beneficial for their own personal development. I think of it like a personal retreat, for your leadership, and just really believe that leaders should always be getting better. And so we're really proud to host this event. It's a live simulcast event that comes out of Chicago, but it's in hundreds of countries around the world after the fact. Wow. I mean, it's a global event. But I love the cross-disciplinary learning, and so you've got social scientists and you've got researchers and you've got there are some pastors that are prominent pastors and spiritual thinkers involved. I mean, Nick Saban is one of the speakers this year.
Is he really?
Yeah, wow. Coach Krzyzewski was one of the speakers last year. So there's usually like a recognizable leader in the sports world. And so just all these different disciplines, the business space.
Bill Clinton showed up one time.
Yeah, it was a controversial moment.
Sure was, yeah.
As you can imagine, if any political leader showed up these days, you can imagine the fallout. But I like this James Hewitt. I don't know if you've heard of him, but he's a human performance scientist.
Oh, wow.
So he's one of the speakers this year. So it's just like that's just this cross-disciplinary people all talking about leadership, and it's just really cutting edge. Like all the stuff that they're talking about is new, and new thinking on certain issues that I think most leaders face. And so again, it is part of our, you said to connect the dots, it is part of our vision to really equip people where they find themselves to be the best that they can be, to continually be improving.
Let me drop a bomb on you right off the bat.
Sure.
So there's people of a certain age, and I'm going to say they're my age, the boomers and late boomers, who still feel obligated to take prominent positions in wherever they have their sphere of influence, whether it is at their work. There's people that are staying at work longer and longer, 65, 67, 70, 75 years old, right? And they're not feeling like there is that Derek Sanford that they could put the baton to. And 30 years ago, when you were 22, 23 years old, 24 years old, I was a 28-year-old CEO when I took over WCTL.
Yeah.
28.
Yeah.
My question is, how much of that is an old person problem, not willing to give up leadership, and how much of that is a young person problem, not saying that they desire responsibility and leadership?
Yeah. I think it depends a lot on the circumstance,
the context,
because I think that both of those things are at play. But, I'll just talk from my own perspective, so the leader before me that we both know, Al Detter, was at Grace for 32 years. I was a young leader coming up through. When I look at what it took for both of us to do the handoff that we took, it took an incredible humility on his part. But it took a patience on my part. Now, again, that might not be the normal problem. I mean, what you're identifying is that there's young people coming up through who are not desiring more leadership or more responsibility.
Or they see a role like you took on of saying, that's too much. I want more work-life balance.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Which is one of my pet peeves, by the way.
It's like, that doesn't exist, y'all. But
nor do I think it should. We could maybe come back to that. But because I don't think balance is. I think
that's not what you're going after.
It's not what you're going after. I think a much better approach is rhythm. By the way, I think there's good rhythms that we should live in, but those rhythms mean pushing hard, and then taking some respite and then pushing hard. So you look at Jesus, for example, who I always look to first. I mean, he had his family show up at one of his, and they're like, "Hey, you need to come home. You look exhausted. You look terrible." And he's like, "Hey, you're not even my family anymore. I got a new family." But he had this moment where he pushed really hard, but then he would retreat to the mountains and he would retreat to the sea and he would fill his soul back up and he would connect with God. I think that rhythm approach is a much better approach to life than trying to achieve some balance. I don't think it's possible.
So I would think that you would say that you are seeing amazing young leaders rise up.
And here's the thing, that doesn't happen by accident. That happens with intentionality. And so, my press to older leaders is to make sure you don't get in your own bubble where you're not intentionally connecting with younger leaders. Mm-hmm. One of the things I've found that young people are just so desirous of is older people who invest in them. Like they want more than anything. They want somebody that's going to invest in them and spend time with them and bring them along and take them to tables that they shouldn't be sitting at yet. And you know what I mean? Inviting them in. And I feel like when we do that with young leaders, that mature leaders can actually create a hunger in them that may not be there, but by including them, by investing in them, and not to go back to the summit, but the summit is one of the great ways to do that. Like if you have some bench players or you have some next level leaders in your organization, and you want to expose them to some great stuff, and then have these kind of conversations out of it, to me, this doesn't happen by accident. It doesn't happen. We don't stumble into, oh yeah, here's my successor. That it just doesn't happen anymore unless there's incredible intentionality. So my challenge to older leaders is to say,
again, it's really kind of up to them to be open and
and
Al Detter was a perfect example of that.
And they have to foster that environment where people desire to step up. Now, young leaders, there's a whole different set of challenges that I would probably give to them, because there is this almost allergy to responsibility, and among some young leaders, it's just like I want. I just want to vibe in the job, and I want, and I think it was Craig Rochelle who said one time, he said, especially for young people, because there's a lot of young people that get very impatient. And they say, hey, I want to be making a difference at my job. I don't want to be doing these menial tasks. And, there's this whole old concept of putting in your time and, working your way up and paying your dues and stuff that people don't want to deal with anymore. And the quote for younger leaders is, most younger leaders overestimate what they can do in the short term and underestimate what they can do in the long term. So in other words, they think that my impact right now has to be big. And what they don't realize is that if you put in your time and keep building on that thing in the long run, they have no idea the impact that they can have. And I sit here at 30 years going, when I look back and go, oh my goodness, the stuff that I've gotten to be a part of and the lives that have shifted as a result of what we've been doing and stuff, it's incredible. But if I had been jumping around from thing to thing to thing, trying to make that instant impact, I'm not sure I would see that, this level of, kind of impact that we've
it seems like in almost every context, there always is that shiny new thing instead of being resilient and getting some grit and making it happen.
Yeah.
We're talking to Pastor Derek Sanford. He is the lead pastor at Grace Church. They're hosting the Global Leadership Summit at the Grace Church-Harborcreek location. More after the break. We're talking about leadership, an important concept and of course, I abide by the John Maxwell, 360 leader. Everybody's a leader, because they're people of influence, right? The Global Leadership Summit is on August 7th and 8th, and early bird pricing ends on July 16th. So, who should come to this? You kind of mentioned about older folks bringing along younger folks, but tell us about, what are some of the pockets of folks that have come?
So you just quoted Maxwell. Maxwell is one of the speakers this year.
Oh, is he really?
Yeah,
okay.
He's at the summit.
Fabulous,
but his whole thing is, everybody's a leader, and he defines leadership very simply. Leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less. Basically, what he says. And we're all influencers. We all influence somebody. So if you're a parent, you influence your children. If you're a friend, you influence your friends. If you're a worker or boss, whatever, you have influence over the people around you. My short answer is everybody should come to this.
Right.
I hit the moment a few years ago where I was trying to kind of parse it out, who should come, and I stood up in front of my church and just said, I've reached the point where you all should come to this. Like there really is, but like I said, there are a lot of businesses now that will allow their employees to come to this as one of the approved trainings for the, so if people have to do continuing ed or some trainings or whatever, I would encourage people to go to their bosses and take them the flyer and say, here's the speakers. Can this be, approved by work? The good thing about this event is that it's local here. And so you can sleep in your own bed. You don't have to, fly across the country and go. It's a really reasonable, conference for people to go to. I think anybody who, again, wants to invest in their own influence, who, if they have an opportunity at work, to move up the ranks or to, to get a promotion or to get a different responsibility or whatever, this is a great time. I've just seen it be such a transformational event for people no matter where they find themselves. So people walk away from this and just go, man, I just got some new clarity on this, on my job, or I got some new clarity on this parenting skill. And who would think that you're going to come to a leadership event and walk away with parenting, chops, but people just saying, oh man, it just totally transformed the way I was thinking about this thing I'm walking through with my kid, so it really does just have a broad, a broad appeal to people in all kind of different industries, all kind of different walks of life. And so we've got lots of, business owners that bring their whole employee base.
I was going to say, doing it as a team seems to be the most, because you can, especially if you can go somewhere after the events. Let's say you're local, you go back to the office or go to a restaurant and process.
Yeah. And we even make it possible for people to do that at the event. If they want to get a hold of us and they say, hey, I'm bringing my team, can we use a room for lunch? Because lunch is part of the span that this covers over 2 days.
Yeah.
We'll let people have a room. They can order food in and whatever, and even just do a lunchtime debrief during the event. But yeah, it's a great team event. I look at just some of the moves that we've made in our organization, and it's just, we can trace a lot of the major steps forward back to the summit. It gave us common language, so when a team comes and together and they heard a talk, and all of a sudden there's this word or phrase or language now that team can take back and begin to use and incorporate into the culture of their organization. That's a powerful thing when we've all experienced something together, and now we can kind of translate it back to our specific situation. And so,
is there a whole lot of leadership training going on in Erie aside from this?
You have the Jefferson Society, some of these places, and some of the business.
But as far as specific leadership,
I don't know.
A lot of times you have to fly, like you say.
Yeah.
You're dropping $1,000 or $2 just to get educated.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I just think, man, one of the phrases that comes out of the summit is they say, when a leader gets better, everybody wins.
Yeah.
And so, like when one person comes and all of a sudden they're inspired, or they have a stronger connection to their purpose in life or God or whatever, when I come back from something like that, my wife wins, my kids win, my coworkers win, my boss wins, my employees win, wherever you may find yourself. In my case, the church wins when I get back. So there's this ripple effect that happens when you invest in your own development, that the people around you start to benefit from you getting better. And, I think that's one of the great, the great things that an event like this does for people.
A lot of times they'll have, the speaker for the hot book. I'll never forget when Daniel Pink was there, and he was talking about what motivates people.
Yeah, motivation.
And people, people in old time management think, well, if I just give them some more money, that and it's like Pink did the research and said no. It's different people are motivated by different things, and most of the time it's just common respect and acknowledgement for the effort made.
Exactly. And I just feel like there's been these nuggets along the way that, I just use an old one you probably remember from way back in the day, but like I was sitting with a business leader the other day and he's like, hey, I just made this presentation to my team and nobody seemed like they were really on board. And he goes, this is a great idea. I was presenting this great idea. And one of the things way back in the day, we talked about from here to there, when you're presenting a new idea, you can't just describe there and how wonderful there is going to be. You have to start by saying, here's why we can't stay here. And you have to build the case for why we can't remain here. And you have to present it almost like it's immoral if we stay here. It's absolutely, unacceptable for us to stay here.
Derek Sanford is our guest here, back after the news at the bottom of the hour on Talk Erie. 434, having the crucial conversations that Erie needs here on Talk Erie and the Joel Natale Show, live from our Kingdom Financial Group studio here. Today, our topic, leadership and the Global Leadership Summit, coming up here on August 7th and 8th at Grace Leadership, it's sponsored by the Grace Leadership Institute. It's actually at Grace Church-Harborcreek, Grace Church-Harborcreek. Pastor Derek Sanford is with us. He's the lead pastor at Grace Church. And, how many summits have you been to?
Man, that's a great question. I mean, we started going back in the 90s. So
yeah, we'd take the truck to Willow Creek.
The van out to Chicago and sit in the, now they call that the studio audience.
Oh, is that what they call that?
Yeah, because that's where they do the taping for the broadcast. So, yeah, it's been, 30.
Wow.
So,
wow.
28
what
or
is
30.
it about the summit that you love so much?
Oh, my goodness. It for me personally, it has had just such an impact at such critical moments of my life. So I said earlier, I think if people think of it as almost like a personal retreat, where they can get better as a person and as a leader. And so for me, it's just had that effect, that there have been like key moments in my life, decisions that I was facing, decisions that our organization was facing, that I got clarity at the summit, and so it's deeply personal to me. That's one thing. I mentioned too the interdisciplinary approach, and so, I look back at some of these key, Joseph Grenny in the social sciences talking about crucial conversations, and Pat Lencioni that a lot of people would know is, talking about team health, and Henry Cloud always brings this like really amazing kind of psychological bent to it, and dealing with difficult people and those sorts of things. And there've just been so many key moments along the way. One of the other things I love about it, and that I've just found it so different from other conferences, so people often go to leadership conferences. Sure. First of all, the summit prides themselves, they call it fresh, actionable leadership content. So it's always fresh, so it's always new thinking, it's actionable. And I think that's one of the things that sets it apart, is that it's not somebody up there opining about some, philosophical whatever. It's stuff that you can go and Monday morning make a change. It's very actionable. Wow. And I've just seen kind of behind the scenes on the summit, because I've been part of some of the teams that have kind of helped evaluate it, to see the amount of effort that goes into them screening the speakers and helping the speakers to understand this particular audience. It's just really incredible. And the other thing I would just say, I think it just cuts across barriers. And so said it's kind of it's a Christian event, but it's not. One of the things that we always talk about with the summit is armed with enough humility, anybody can learn from anybody. And so, there's lots of the speakers who are not Christians, lots of the speakers who are pastors, for heaven's sakes. And so, but business leaders can learn from pastors, and pastors can learn from scientists. And so, I just love that, like, open-handed, hey, we can all learn from anybody. Let's just get the best thinking on the table. And
that's kind of what you've been trying to do with the Grace Leadership Institute, isn't it?
Yeah, it
totally
Talk
a bit about where the GLI is at.
Yeah, so the Grace Leadership Institute down here in Erie and 7th and Holland is, we really wanted to create a world-class, leadership training center. And so we're in a little bit of a shift there. We wanted to bring some great, thinkers and speakers into the GLI, and we're really kind of doubling down on making it a real training center, where we want to help train leaders, normal people, where they live, work, learn, and play in issues of discipleship and in issues of leadership. And so we're getting ready for a good relaunch here this coming year, and offering a whole new set of training experiences for people. And so I'd encourage people to keep their eyes open for that.
That's so in the fall is when the next go around will be. Neat. Yeah. You talk about components of leadership, 3 components of leadership. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, sure. So, I think that when people think about leadership, it tends to be this like far out there concept. Yeah. And so I actually, there's a passage in the Old Testament that I go back to that I think it's talking about David. It's in Psalm 78, and it says, "And God chose David his servant. He took him from the sheepfolds. And David shepherded them." He's talking about now when David comes into this leadership position. "He shepherded them with integrity of heart, and with skillful hands he led them." And when I think about leadership, that passage kind of holds the 3 C's. There's a calling. So there's a sense of, this is my purpose. This is what I was made to do. It says that God chose David. So there's this calling component. Then it says that he shepherded them with integrity of heart. That's character. And so that there's a character aspect of leadership. And then it says with skillful hands, he led them. That's a competencies. And so if you think of leadership as a combination of those 3 things, there's a calling, there's a character, and there are certain competencies that I need to lead well. And so as we think, you just mentioned the Grace Leadership Institute. When we think about how do we train leaders there, well, we want to train people in all of those things. And what happens when people get into a job, often it just becomes very competency focused.
Sure.
What are the skills that I need to do this job? And do I have to learn, Microsoft Teams or Asana or, what are these, what are these softwares that I need to learn? And so it becomes this skill, everything's just learning new skills. And it's important, but that's not the most important. And so we're trying to kind of fill in the blanks and go, what does it look like to have a calling in your leadership? What does it look like? And one of the courses that we're going to be offering a lot this coming year, it'll be launching in the fall, is called Handcrafted. And Handcrafted is helping leaders to name their calling. And we're narrowing it all the way down to 2 words, to name your 2-word calling. And so here are when I walk into any room, when I'm with my kids, when I'm with my wife, when I'm in a meeting, a business meeting, when I'm on the radio here with you, I know that my 2 words are unlocking potential. That's the reason that I'm on the planet. That's the reason when I walk into any room, I know that that's what I want to do. I want to unlock people's potential.
So you have a way that you could help people.
Yeah.
Because discovering that.
That's exactly right. So we have a 6-week process that we'll walk people to define those 2 words. And it's through a bunch of assessments. It's through a bunch of conversations. We really believe it's a communal effort. But it's been incredibly powerful. So we're rolling that out in the fall. That's the calling.
Yeah.
That's the calling side. And then there's the character side. And one of the things about leadership character, and again, this is the stuff that goes into, how we lead. It's not just the competencies, it's not just the skills, but it's what do I bring to the table. I just have seen there's a renaissance when it comes to the character of leadership. Even in secular books, leadership books are talking about the importance of humility and talking about the importance of servanthood and the importance of these things Jesus talked about thousands of years ago. We're finally figuring out, they're actually pretty good.
20 plus years ago, built to last.
Yeah.
Good to great. I mean, Jim Collins
level
talked about
leader.
that level 5 leader.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
And
So when I think about
servant leadership,
Joel, I think that people need to really think about those 3 components. That what is my purpose? What is my calling? Am I leading with character? And then am I developing the right skills? To be able to lead. And I think one of the incredible questions that I've been asking my leaders is to go, will the leadership skills that you currently possess carry you to your desired future? Or do you need to be developing? Do you need to be learning some new skills? Do you need to be learning about your character and how you lead and how you come across and how people respond to you? Those are character questions. And so it's like, is what you have right now enough to get you to that next phase? And I think for most of us, the answer is I actually need to keep developing. The world's changing so fast. The stuff we're walking through is changing so fast. AI is here. I mean, there's just so many, the diversity of workplaces and remote work and the political climate and how do we navigate some of these issues that our country's talking about in the workplace. And it's like, is what you have right now sufficient to get you through to the and I think most of us, if we're honest, would go, I know I need I need
a boost.
I need a boost. I need help.
Yeah.
And that to me is what the summit, what we're trying to do at the Grace Leadership Institute is trying to fill in those blanks of just going, man, we need better leaders. If the world has ever needed better leaders, it's right now.
You think about those high capacity owners. Let's put it totally in the business world. You're running an organization. You're billing $10 million a year. Wouldn't you want a team, especially your highest level team, filled with a calling, filled with character and competency. And I'll add the fourth C because you're building a culture.
Yeah, that's a good one.
In your organization to meet that, hey, I want to do a 3x growth in the next 2 years or what. Well, how are you going to get there?
That's right.
Without having the human person, the human resources
Yeah.
that can lead you to that area.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And exactly. Yeah. And so, I do think that for because we just get, everybody's going 100 miles an hour.
Correct.
And we don't think about this stuff. But,
or we're so entangled with the widget that we're creating.
Right.
And I think even in the nonprofit world, they all have widgets.
No doubt.
In the church world, we have a widget.
No doubt.
And if you're not stepping back and analyzing and seeing, there might be a better way to build this.
It's the difference between working in your business and working on your business.
Correct.
And so, there's a lot of us that are working in our business and it's going 100 miles an hour and, we're consumed with it and can't really think about anything else. And we need to take that step up for a minute and go, okay, am I the kind of leader that I want to be? Am I the kind of leader that I'm, proud of? And am I accomplishing in my time on this earth what I want to accomplish? Am I leaving the mark that I want to leave? And I think those are questions that we don't ask enough. This.
You don't think we spend enough? Well, I know we don't. We don't spend enough time kind of blue skying. What could be.
No, we don't.
Or what do I want to be remembered as?
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
Leaving that legacy, right?
Do I have time for a story?
You have lots of time.
All right.
Yeah.
So. There's a guy named Alfred Nobel, and people will know who this is.
The fireworks guy.
Yeah, so the inventor of dynamite.
Right, yes.
Okay? And there's this great story about him. He's reading the newspaper one morning, and to his shock, he turned the page and discovered that his own obituary in the paper. So it turns out his brother had died, and the newspaper had published Alfred's obituary by mistake. And the headline of the obituary read, "The Merchant of Death is Dead." So he was the inventor of dynamite, okay? And here's the quote. It says, Dr. Alfred Nobel, who became rich by finding ways to kill more people faster than ever before, died yesterday. Okay? So he reads this article and it has this, he's taken back. And he's going, this is the way I'm going to be remembered, And he decided to set aside the bulk of his estate and establish the Nobel Foundation, which, bestows these annual awards and all kinds of sciences and cultural thing. And so, what's interesting is he changed his legacy.
Did he?
Yeah. I mean, right now he's not remembered as the Merchant of Death. He's remembered as the Nobel Prizes and this humanitarian person. And having read his obituary while he was still alive gave him this new perspective. And I think that's that thing. That's that moment of going, do we, in one of my classes that I teach on character, that's how we start one of the courses. We have people write their own obituary and just go, what's it going to say? And, we give some prompts and, what's it going to say about this? What's it going to say about that? And I think it's just such an important perspective to keep in mind. I'm going, what is the mark that I want to make in this world? What do I actually want to accomplish? And, when my kids are standing up there, talking about me, what are they going to say? And, I think that's the kind of stuff that we want to get at and helping to train people to do it better, that it's not the rat race.
Can a leader have it all? Can they have a functioning family and a vibrant business and a vibrant organization that they lead and, strong, deep relationships with friends and colleagues?
Yeah. There's always going to be compromises somewhere. And so I think the answer to your question is yes. But I think every individual has to figure out, where am I willing to sacrifice? And I think what a lot of people do is they make that their home. They say, I'm going to sacrifice my home life to get to the top. And I think everybody has to ask the question, what's going to give? And the answer to that question has a lot to do with determining what your legacy is. How every person answers that question. When you say have it all, I mean, I don't think any of us can have it all. I think we all have to decide what is it that what's my mark going to be. I think people are higher capacity than others, that some people can, there's lots of people that have managed to run a successful company and have a great family and have some friendships and stuff like that. But something does have to give somewhere in that equation.
Isn't part of it having a reasonable expectation that you're not going to be Elon Musk or Steve Jobs, but you can be Derek or Joel or Shaney in Erie, Pennsylvania, being a person of influence?
Yeah, and I really do think a lot of it comes down to this, where are we finding our identity? And again, I'm a pastor, so you're going to get the pastor answers.
Okay.
I really do think, because what a lot of people are chasing is identity. They're saying, I got to figure out who I am, and we're trying to make this mark of who I am. And one of Jesus's most profound moments is when he got down on his knees and washed his disciples' feet. Okay, this is right about before he's about to die. He does this profoundly humble act. He's the one that created every foot in the room, and now he's on his knees with a basin and a towel washing these feet, which was a servant's job, was the lowliest job. And in the lead up to that moment, the Bible says it this way. It says, Jesus, knowing from whom he'd come and knowing where he was going, got down and washed his disciples' feet. And I've always thought it takes somebody who's crystal clear on their identity to be able to, as you put it, have it all, because now I'm not out there trying to make myself somebody that I'm not. I know who I am. I know where I've come from. I know where I'm going, which allows me now to just serve people and to be helpful to people and to run a business that helps solve problems and to, help my kids get through their toughest moments. And, I just had a late night conversation with one of my sons last night who's running a business. And, he's started a business. He's in that launch mode, running crazy. He
Total
just has
grind,
a grind. He's got a new little baby at home. He's like,
goodness.
Dad, I don't know. And I'm like, buddy, you need to decide what the mark is that you want to leave in this world and what's you got a moment here that you probably need to grind hard, to get this thing where it needs to be. But if you stay in that mode, you are going to miss one of the main reasons that you're on the planet,
Right.
And you're going to chase this thing down, and your daughter's going to be, I'm like, she's going to be saying words soon. And some of those words better not be, where's my dad?
Yes.
When I need him, And so, yeah, I just think that when we can settle into our identity, and again, my prayer for people listening would be that they would find their identity in Christ, that they would find their identity in the God who made them. Once we have that solid foundation, man, now we can live on purpose in all of these areas, and we don't have to chase this thing just because we think it's going to give us some kind of reputation or make us feel better to be Elon Musk or to be, making all kind of money or whatever. We can do what we've been tasked to do.
I would say that understanding your identity, understanding your calling, why you're on this planet, might be the biggest discovery you can make. Better than a patent, better than, it's unreal. And it sounds like you might be able to have that kind of moment at the Global Leadership Summit. Again, August 7th and 8th. It is at Grace Harborcreek, which is right off of Buffalo Road there.
Yes, 2420 Cumberland Road.
Cumberland Road.
Right off of Buffalo Road.
And so if people want to get involved, that early bird pricing ends on July 16th. What do they need to do to register?
So they go to graceleadershipinstitute.com/summit. And there are great discounts available for military folks, students, school staff, Grace Church attendees, some great discounts until July 16th. So graceleadershipinstitute.com/summit.
I appreciate you taking the time.
Hey, thanks, Joel. It's always good, man. I love chatting it up with you.
You got it. Fantastic. Pastor Derek Sanford, lead pastor at Grace Church. Again, the Grace Leadership Summit coming up almost just a month away now. So get involved. Thanks, Derek.
Love it. Thanks.